So as I'm sure you're well aware by now, News Talk have launched a brand new podcast. It's called It's All Relative. It's available right now in the News Talk app. And it is the brainchild of Susan Bradley, who is in studio alongside me. Sister of Brian O'Driscoll. I don't know if you're always happy to be introduced as Sister of Brian O'Driscoll, but it's very relevant this time because, as the name of the podcast says, It's All Relative. 6-part series where you talk to the siblings of famous sports people.
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell. Although it's not just sports people.
Right.
It's people from all walks of life, all crafts and fields. And yeah, I suppose to answer your question, I'm well used to being known as his sister, which is delightful. But thankfully, my psychiatrist is saying I'm dealing with that very well.
Honestly now, Susan, how much of your life is that annoying when you're introduced, when you walk into a room and say, this is Brian O'Driscoll's sister?
That's very annoying. Yeah. I mean, when people find out your surname, I'm Bradley now, which is great and that's very helpful. But when sometimes they find out you're an O'Driscoll, their opinion kind of and their mannerisms change. And you're like, God, I'm still the same person. So you kind of take it with a pinch of salt though.
Right.
You know, I mean, look, if you're at the Aviva Stadium and somebody's introduced, look, you know, it's fine, but my sister and I, we don't lose any sleep over it.
Okay.
We're pretty happy
You're
with our own lives.
You're used to it by now. Okay. There are 6 episodes. You talk to Cecilia Shefflin, who is the sister of Henry, Richie Kearney, brother of Rob and Dave, Brad Habana, brother of Brian, Jamie Duff, brother of Damien, Stephen O'Riordan, brother of Joanne O'Riordan, and Idel O'Neill and Claire O'Neill, who are the sisters of Rory O'Neill, aka Banty Bliss. And I'm delighted that both Jamie Duff and Richie Kearney are on the line as well. How you keeping, lads?
How are you doing?
Hi Nathan, how are you?
I'll ask you the same question that I just asked Susan. Jamie, how annoying has it been throughout your life being introduced as Damien's brother?
Believe it or not, I really haven't got any of that over the years. You probably can tell by visually looking at me. I've got the big ears and the Roman nose, which Damien doesn't have. So
yeah, tash going on as well.
Look, Myra's away, my missus is away, so I can kind of experiment a little bit. It'll have to go when she returns, though.
Richie, was it an issue for you?
Not major. Probably, been called worse, so I'll take it. Sometimes people, frequently it always happens, I just kind of call you Rob or Dave by accident, sometimes I don't even realise it. It's water off a duck's back at this stage.
Why did you want to do this podcast, Susan?
Well, I suppose I adore people and the human connection, and COVID has kind of pretty much put a halt on that for the last 20 months. So I was craving a bit of crack and a bit of interaction. It's been in my head for, probably the likes of 10 years, to be honest. And I suppose the crux of it is you always hear from the professional, the person who's gone on to ace their field and perfect their craft and gone on to achieve an enormous success. And I suppose through media coaching, they keep you updated on their latest venture, be it a game or project and so on. Their external brand as such is carved out to almost this perfected entity. But if you strip all that away and actually just look at the person, they've family, they've likely got siblings like yourself and myself. They're a brother, a sister, an auntie, an uncle, a parent, a cousin, and talking to their siblings, it's fascinating to hear firstly their story, because I believe everybody has a story to tell, but also the impact on where you come in the family, the different personalities, and how that sibling, I suppose their life impacted on them growing up. So it was an idea that I'm in a very fortunate position where people used to ask Julie and I, what was it like? And we're super proud and we're a close family. But it is tough sometimes when, there's a really bad game or there's a terrible injury. For example, 2005 when he was spear tackled in New Zealand on the tour. That was pretty tough. And it's just sharing stories and listening to the other person telling theirs.
Yeah. Jamie, growing up with Damien and growing up around Damien's fame, particularly say from 2002 on at the World Cup and him becoming an absolute superstar, for you being around that, what was it like?
it was incredible. Like, I mean, I was only a teenager at the time, so, and as Susan mentioned, like, incredibly proud of him. Overwhelming, you know, being at that age, just looking up to him as an icon and not just a brother. I was trying to progress in my football career as well at that time, so just a great role model and an amazing sibling like the rest of them. But as you probably know that already, Damien was a very grounded guy. So despite the fame and the fortune, he was always Damien. You know, he never let himself go.
He must have lost a run of himself the odd time.
Honest to God, he was like a recluse at times. As you've heard stories, like he just eat, sleep, and repeat. You know, he was like a newborn baby at times, and that's why I think he got so much success in his career. Listening to his body, recovering. You'll never see him in a newspaper on the front of the magazine, and I think that spurred him on and gives him the great credit that he deserves.
And I think that's a really interesting point, because what became very apparent talking to various people in this series was that drive and that steely determination and the focus. Like, that's no coincidence how the sibling or the relative has gone on to achieve enormous success. That keeps coming up, and it's a no-brainer. But it's really interesting to hear Jamie, so through his eyes, and also Richie, we spoke about it too, how the two guys have gone on to achieve insane amount of success.
And I guess, Richie, as well, in a way, you can almost enjoy their success more than they can at times, because they're the professionals who roll on from one week to another. There's a big game, there's a big victory, they might get out for a couple of drinks, but they're straight back into camp, whereas actually, you know, you can let loose.
Yeah, and you know, Susan and I chatted about that, and yeah, I think for a sibling, you can, like, you log in and have a great time, but ultimately you'll move on. You've got your own family, your own stuff to look after, and it's probably the parents are a little bit more zoned into it, and they wear it so much more than we do. And yeah, the lads, like, it's, as Jamie will know, like, it's not all bright lights and celebrations after goals. You know, like, there's a lot of tough times there and down times, and people forget about those. And you know, huge pressure coming into the games, and particularly if one or two of them, a back might be against the wall or something like that. And we don't wear that. You know, you kind of cruise in on the day of the game and have a look and enjoy thereafter. But yeah, there's a lot more to it, I think, outside the sibling.
Because your three brothers are all in real high-profile sports, and the criticism can be harsh and relentless, and the talk around matches is relentless, and they all seem quite good at this stage of being able to block it out and ignoring it. But it's a lot harder, I'd imagine, for the siblings, where you're reading everything and seeing everything. And is it hard, Jamie, not to get upset on their behalf when you're reading it or hearing it?
Just actually, it gave me a kind of a brief memory there. I have an anecdote about that situation. I remember myself and my family when Damien went to Newcastle. Bit of a tough time in his career, you know, probably coming on the downslope of his peak, coming from Chelsea. And I remember sitting in the stands, excited, you know, wanting to see Damien back on the pitch again. Just the abuse, the absolute hard abuse over my shoulder, saying this and that, absolute profanities. My mother was in tears, and I'm hugging her and going, look, don't worry about it. It was a really tough time as a sibling. I'm sure Richie has got this before. Just the torrents of abuse coming over the shoulders. That was the first time in my life where I just didn't know what to do. I was helpless. What's the point in turning around and telling these idiots to you know what? So that was an anecdote now that makes me think back, and it was an awful time, and I'm sure Richie can reflect on that as well. Just being helpless and hearing the abuse to your brother, the one that you love, and there's nothing you can do, you know. So they're the tough times when your back's up against the wall. It's not all bright lights, as Richie said, and scoring goals. Yeah, the glamour of it.
Yeah, and like for me, like the one that we, you know, when Jamie's talking about that jumps out was the match against Argentina, I think in 2015, maybe a quarter-final in the World Cup, and Ireland were under a lot of pressure. They lost 5 huge players, and Argentina were just running them ragged, and we were watching it in a pub somewhere, and obviously Dave was on the wing and Rob was at 15, so they were feeling a lot of pressure out in the wings. Like, you know, they were just getting torn asunder in the middle of the pitch. And by the time it got out to them, it was kind of quite public, and a lot of the damage had been done. But like the pub was just turning on particularly the outside backs, and yeah, you're hearing that abuse, and like nobody really knows who you are there. You're just there with your family, like you just have to bite your tongue, and nobody wants to be that. Nobody wants to be that aggressive sibling. So you just keep, like, I've never said a word to anybody, like, just keep the head down. Rob has always been like, and Dave, like, head down, keep the dignity. So you learn to suck these things up.
It can be tricky. I mean, trying not to say anything, but I'm exactly like this, the lads. And look, fortunately, the down times, the really tough times, aren't hugely frequent, or were not very frequent. So we kind of tend to remember the really, really amazing highs, the wins. I used to see Richie and all the family for a drink after the game, which was really good crack, and you get to know people really well. And I suppose I would understand where Richie's from. If Rob or Dave had a really good game or a bad game, you might just give them a little bit of time, because all the lads want to do is come in, like Damien, go over to the family, have a beer, and just be completely themselves.
And I guess people in stadiums as well, they don't mean it.
No.
They're just emotional, because I remember being at Croke Park last year, and I was sat beside, didn't realise it at the time, a player's family, and the player made a run down the pitch, lost the ball, and there was two elderly women sitting beside me, and the language out of them was quite impressive, actually, what they called them. But sitting down in front was this player's sister, who turned around and said, "That's my brother, and that's his parents you're sitting beside, and that's incredibly upsetting what you're saying." And the two women didn't have much to say for the rest of the match, it turned out, but they were shell-shocked suddenly what they had said, and probably just said it in the heat of the moment. But you can understand from the family point of view, having to sit through that when your brother or your son or daughter is out there putting that sort of effort in, and all they're getting is dog's abuse.
Yeah, look, it's always people who'll take you by surprise like that. People love to be, celebrating with you when you're doing really, really well. And then when things are tricky, when they, all players go through injury and tough times, that's really when they kind of rely on the family. But generally speaking, look, the series has been really fun in terms of listening to the guys and the girls' stories. There's been some hilarious moments. I'm sure you're aware that there's a Biden connection to the Kearneys.
No. All the Biden connections are Mayo. I know Loud tried to get in there at the end.
I think his approval ratings are nosediving there, so we're just distancing ourselves at the moment, to be honest.
They're with presidential royalty there. Yeah, no, just all these little fun stories have come up, and I've been really lucky to be able to have the crack and listen to the great stories, and some really sad stories too. But isn't that life?
Yeah.
It's the highs and lows.
Give us then, go on the good stories. Give us, Jamie, the best, most memorable thing about following Damien's career.
Wowzer, that's putting me on the spot there. I mean, I could stay here for 2 hours and tell you some wonderful stories. We could sit down and have a good crack. But I suppose, apart from being a wonderful brother, we all know that it's possibly the highs of 2002. Seeing him win 2 premierships with Chelsea, being at that age, going over to Stamford Bridge, getting the chance to go to Japan to the World Cup, where he probably played the best football of his life. That's probably the highlight of me watching him as a fan as well as a sibling. Looking at him and just being like, "That's my brother." Like, what a wonderful feeling. Fills me with love and happiness. Great times in my life.
And I'm sure that remains. And for all of you, because all your siblings are such loved members of Irish sport, like Damien Duff walks into a room, people smile. Still, even now, Brian O'Driscoll, Rob Kearney, people, they just remember the good times. They don't remember the bad times. And to actually have that, and that's going to stick with them for the rest of their life. And when you're around them and kids are around them and all that, there's always going to be something slightly different about their uncle. That's
a great point you made there. Even to I hang around with him very regularly, and whenever he's in the company of strangers, you hit the nail on the head. It puts smiles on people's faces, and no matter what age he'll be, he will have that infectious impact on people, which is amazing, so I'm good on him.
Of course, you were in a slightly different situation with both Rob and Dave, both playing. Richie, was that's another complication when one is in the team and one is out of the team.
Yeah, that was okay from memory. Like neither of them got too caught up on it. Like they understood that they both understood. Some days it's one's day, and the other day it's another. So that was that wasn't a big thing. It was just more, I guess for mum and dad, like that they were both fit and no injury. Like that was always the biggest concern, not about who was selected and who wasn't.
We had Brian O'Driscoll in studio earlier. Can't get rid of the O'Driscoll family. He was divulging that there's a certain stag party happening this weekend. Rob's stag party's happening this weekend. So give us the lowdown. This will be front page news tomorrow, so be careful.
This came from Brian, by the way, Richie, not me. Thank you.
Yeah, the lowdown. I think this was originally scheduled, I think, for Friday lunchtime. And I told you, Susan, I wasn't going to be around. I think you had a little bit of a think about asking me, well, could you just log in quickly to...
Can you imagine?
Swift. No, but yeah, it's kicking off tomorrow in Madrid. I think Rob and Brian and a couple other Leinster boyos are heading over on an early flight in the morning at about 6:30 a.m. I can't go until 5 p.m. So I'm actually nervous about what I'm going to walk into in Madrid tomorrow night. I'd say it'll be like walking into Baghdad. Yeah, I'm nervous and excited in equal measures.
All right, well,
nervous.
Enjoy the weekend. And Jamie, of course, Damien is back in the news just today, unveiled as the new Shelbourne manager. I was looking at some of his press conference from earlier on. He was saying he gets a little bit restless.
Yeah, look, he can be a very highly strung guy at times, but I mean, I think he uses it to his benefit. He's a very meticulous guy, especially in his coaching. This is a new challenge for him. And we were kind of speaking about it briefly. We're like, should he go back abroad to further his career? Should he be staying at home, taking a job in the Irish League? And you know what? We kind of concluded and said, you know what? I've never seen Damien as happy in my life. He's full of life. His family are great. He's at home. So do you know what? If he's happy, that's the main thing. And we're all delighted for him, and I wish him all the best.
Yeah, can't wait to see how he gets on. Susan, it's a cracking idea.
Thank you.
And some brilliant guests lined up for the first series, we'll call it.
Oh,
Listen, if you call it the first series, there'll have to be a second one. If we say it on air, it has to happen.
Do you have a sibling, Nathan?
That's how these things work. So whereabouts are we at the moment? How many episodes up?
So we've just released episode 4 today, which is Brad Habana, brother of Brian Habana, South African rugby player. And yeah, one a week every Wednesday. So newstalk.com.
Brilliant. Yeah, newstalk.com. Just download the Newstalk app. The It's All Relative podcast available now on the app, the website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Jamie Duff, Richie Kearney, thank you for joining us. Susan, thank you as well.
Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.